Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Darius KomodoDragonJesus Vita here for Poker VIP. Once again, this is a video on how I beat 200 no limit. We're playing the Snap poker games on 888. I've been playing the session for a bit, and the pool is actually moderately tougher than I'd like it to be, but hopefully that ends up giving us some pretty interesting spots. So let's see what we can make happen here. For this price, we're going to be calling a lot of suited cards, as long as small blind doesn't throw in a squeeze. Looks like he does. And we have ace-10 on the button, which is, of course, wonderful. Pretty solid blind versus blind hand on the right as well. This type of board, especially with the deuce and the four, is going to be very difficult for big blind to connect with in a big way. So we're just going to be betting small with either nearly or all of my range. And it works out quite nicely because for that bet size, villain has to defend an absurd amount of his range, and your average villain is just going to have a really hard time doing that. Interesting. So Real Noodles here opens to 5x. I'm going to give him the fish bones here because you don't see many good players doing that. And I'm actually going to make the tight fold here with ace-10. We're going to try to keep an eye on that player because if he's loose and splashy, then that could end up being very nice and fun for us. Pocket nines is a wonderful hand. And we'll just be starting that one out with an open raise. I did get a question on one of my previous videos about why I'm going to 2.5x here. I've been going to 3x in some of my other videos. And right now I'm just kind of experimenting with the different sizings. 2.5x seems to be working out quite well. And, well, I guess we'll see how it goes. I think a pretty standard check on this board. It will just be a check fold three-way. And I decide to go for the flat with ace-10 versus a regular in the cutoff. I'll be floating this board. It's less desirable with another player behind. That being said, we do want to have some floats here and 2 overcards plus backdoor flush draw, especially when it's an ace high. So I'll have significant equity versus his king high and queen high bluffs. That seems like it'll be a pretty good one. And he follows up with a large bet on the turn. We completely miss, and it's just going to be a fold. Calling fours against who we hope is a nice, loose, splashy player. Do I have notes on this guy? No, I don't. But we do notice that he opened just to 3x big blind this time rather than 5x. I'm going to slide the hand over onto my other monitor there. And I think if I actually get to see showdown in this hand, I think that'll be quite valuable. It looks like that wasn't the case, though. That's too bad. Lovely hand on the right. And we are going to start off with an open raise with both of them, looks like. Ah, that's too bad. Queen 6 is kind of close on the cutoff, especially if I have tight players behind. Button is a short stack, so I'm going to want to be tightening up against him. Starting off with the flat in position with 7s versus a fairly small raise, and we flop the dream. It's a pretty dry board. If he bets into me, I'm not going to have a raising range on this board unless he's just getting completely out of line with his c-bet frequencies. And when check 2, I'm just going to throw in a medium-sized bet of 6. Most of the check calling range here will be stuff like pairs between the queen and the 7, which we'll definitely get value out of. Looks like not this time, though. Decided to start with a flat with the pocket 10s against under the gun. And we get this board with the 2 overs that we'll just be folding on. And just taking that one down too. I had to say this in my previous videos as well. I don't know if you guys can hear it. I have my door closed. It is as soundproof as it can possibly be in my office right now. There is a baby crying in my house. If you guys can hear that, I do apologize. Let's just hope it doesn't last very long. Overcall here with the 9-8, getting those type of odds. I don't see folding happening ever, and this isn't really a hand I want to 3-bet. You just have to fold on that flop, though. Very similar dry board to that queen 4 deuce as we saw earlier. So I'm going to be starting off just by betting everything for a very small amount, and we just keep getting the folds. That's lovely. Whoops. Click fold and watch. Don't want to watch that one. Alright, pretty strong hand in the big blind. 5-9, I'm not going to be folding to a min raise. I could also be 3-betting it, I guess. Got an unknown limping versus me blind versus blind. Just definitely going to be raising that with king queen. And that is a wonderful, wonderful flop. I'm going to be leading this turn sometimes. I think I'm going to go with that right now. Because he's not going to have a lot of 9s in his c-betting range, and he's going to check back a lot of aces. We want to punish him for... I don't know if that's necessarily a punish, but we want to do it. I'll be c-betting. I'm going to go for a larger sizing here, and the reason for that is simply because this guy limped blind versus blind, which you'll see some regs doing sometimes, but I think for the most part, those types of players are just going to be on the casual side. I'm going to turn my 3s into a bluff on this board. 3s benefit from betting quite a bit there. Simply because with 1 or 2 bets we can get most other pairs to fold, and most villains' range will be extremely capped on a lot of straightening and flushing turn cards. Just getting back to that king-queen we had over here for a second, if that was a reg battle type of hand, where reg had decided to go for the limp call in the small blind, incorporating that type of strategy, I think a very small bet, similar to the ones I've been making on the dry boards on the button, would be quite effective as well. But if I suspect a player of being on the casual side, the recreational side there, we just kind of want to attempt to pump in as much money as humanly possible. So that's why I went larger there. Looks like I'm getting a free flop here. We got a limper, which is always fun. Over limp is not necessarily always as fishy of a move as the initial limp, but it's something we might want to keep our eye on. And we are going to go for a 3-bet here. Pocket tens. I'm going to choose not to bluff into 3 players here, especially with 2 limpers in the pot. I don't think we're going to get away with it as much as we want with a random hand like King 8. Semi-bluffing a flush draw, of course, is always a viable option. Going to start off with a small bet on this board as well. We'll be checking a majority of turns here with the tens. We actually get quite a bit of value out of worse hands and ace-high floats by going for the small bet there. Yeah, so this is going to be a check with the tens. And it's very likely going to be a check call. He goes for a very small bet, which I think that's kind of interesting. I'm not sure how often he expects me to just be check folding here. We'll probably have to check fold the river. I do expect any pair that he has, like any 1-pair type hand, to just go check check, and we'll win against the majority of those. The times that he is betting, he's representing polarized range, something like queens plus, which includes flushes, and his bluffs are going to be, I guess, stuff like ace-jack type hands that floated the flop. I'm going to keep up with the small bets here. Tens is actually probably one of the hands that benefits least from using this small bet size. On those type of dry boards, I don't really use multiple bet size unless somebody is really fishy. So I just decide to go small with pretty much my entire range. And tens, the reason why it doesn't benefit as much is, like, naturally sometimes when we get called, we're going to be behind. Ace-X is going to be a pretty big part of any villain's range. But we also don't really need to protect from overcards as much as we would on other board textures, simply because in the button versus big blind dynamic, you're going to see a lot of 3-bets with a lot of Broadway type cards, which are going to be the double overcards to the 10. So a majority of his range, if it has overcards, is going to be stuff like 1 overcard, and that's not significantly worrying. I'm going to start off with a float here, a couple overcards, some good backdoors. On a lot of low cards, I think we'll see villains check quite frequently, and we'll be able to take it down as well. That's not really one of them. I mean, yeah, it's a low card, and sure, I probably have more 7s than him, but it's not nearly enough to scare a majority of his range. He does decide to go for the check anyways. I am going to bet. We're going to bet like 40 here. Just kind of a medium-sized bet. I could potentially go smaller. I don't think that this is a board that overpairs will really slow down on all that often. Because of the 7, I don't think the 7 is, scary enough. So I kind of expect when he checks to check fold a lot. And I don't think we're often getting worse if I just jam this river, so I'm actually just going to check this combo down. He does show up with ace-king here sometimes as well. Pocket king is a little bit of an unexpected hand. If he is checking pocket kings on that turn, I think it should probably be for a check jam on that texture. So he's clearly giving a lot of respect to the sevens there. I'll fold big blind here with the 10 deuce. Jack-7 is very close to the bottom of my opening range, so we're not going to do anything there other than fold. It's also against the player who we did see overlimp earlier. I'm going to be squeezing my ace-queen with pot size 24. You know, 24 seems like a reasonable sizing. Let's do it. Thank you, pot button. Who threw that trophy at me? Is that this guy? Ay, ay, ay. Yeah, we're gonna continue. Not the happiest continue, though. Price is pretty good. I have played with the drop bar a bit. He's not, like, super nitty or anything. So I do think he can potentially have some bluffs here. On this type of board in a 4-bet pot, we're just getting money in. There's no way around it. He decides to bet small on the flop, which is, you know, very nice bet sizing. Don't think I'm going to want to be check raising here ever. We get a lovely, lovely turn card. And, yeah, we'll just check all in on the turn. If he checks back, I'll jam river for value on basically any river. And we're good, right on. Interesting 4-bet. I think with the king-queen, flatting would be better than 4-betting. But basically, once he gets to post-flop, I think that play is relatively standard. Sorry guys, just opening up my notepad here. And we'll start out with a raise. The pocket nines. Be generous. We suspect he's a little on the casual side, since we did see him limping blind versus blind, but other than that, I don't know much about him. He throws in the 3-bet. It's a reasonable size out of position. We are very deep, so we're super happily calling pocket nines in position here. Flop's okay. And he starts off with half-pot bet, and yeah, we're going to be continuing here. I'm just going to click call. Six is going to be much better for my range than for his, but naturally he's going to have some super strong hands, over pairs, you know, sets of 10s, stuff like that. I'll be calling a second street, unimproved, probably going to be folding to a 3rd bet, but that's an improvement. And I expect him to check this nearly always. And then the question is, how big do I go? All in is a very reasonable sizing here. If he has 10s, he's not going to fold to an all in. I don't know what he's going to do with aces. Yeah, you know, let's do it. So, you know, sucks we get the fold there. We got a couple other nice opens here, Jack 10 as well as King Jack. Okay, a couple of decisions here. Zava, I've seen him do a lot of weird things, including like opening up 5x. He's got the fish bones. King Jack can often be a 4-bet bluff here, but he's not the type of guy I'm going to do it against. This type of board is much more connected than those dry boards I was talking about earlier. So instead of just betting everything for a small size, I'm going to bet a more polarized range for a larger size. Deuce 4 for this sizing never gets folded. We could 3-bet it as a bluff. I'm less likely to do that against the casual players. And we hit a pair, so facing a check here. I do think we have the best hand, at least some of the time. This hand also benefits quite a lot from betting to deny or at least charge villain for continuing and realizing his equity with overcards to the 4, which, let's face it, pretty much everything is overcards to the 4. King Deuce, who's in the blinds? I don't think we'll be raising this one, even if it folds around to me. I got a limp, out of borrow, that's always fun. I think this hand's still going to be a little bit loose to open from these positions, so we're still just going to go for the fold. I don't particularly like squeezing this type of hand versus MP, but for this price I think I'm going to actually play. Naturally not the greatest spot out of the small blind, but the price is really good. And we flop a draw to the nuts, which is awesome. I'm going to take a half pot sizing with my 3 and my 6. And we take it down. That's a board texture where I probably should be betting a little smaller. But out of position, I still stick with about the half pot sizing. I'm considering going for a bet with the ace-10. I think I'm going to go with a check, though. Like, once flop checks around, I assume most players will not have the strongest of hands. That being said, they'll still have plenty of pair hands that we'll call at least once. Then we have to get into decision whether or not we want to double barrel here. Really weird bet from this guy. I'm not entirely sure what he's representing other than something like a strong draw or pocket deuces. Which naturally, pocket deuces is in range. There's a temptation to go for a check raise there. But I think when he mashes that big, our check raise is going to be less successful Then if, for example, he had bet just half pot, aces are wonderful. We're going to start off with a raise. You know, just in case you guys didn't know, aces are wonderful. Get a flat call. Get this very, very coordinated board. This player did start with less than 100 blinds. I'll be starting off with a bet on this flop, and we're going to go something like 2/3. And we actually just get the fold right away, which, let's face it, on that type of board is a reasonable result. I don't think villain will often be checking better hands on this board with the ace-10, so I'm going to throw in a bet. We're going to go on the small side as well. I'll be checking back turn with this flush, and if it goes check-check on the river, I'll probably be trying to get a street of value in. This will be a very annoying spot if I get check raised. Looks like that doesn't happen though. And we're just going to check down against Chill the Beans here. This board is quite poor for jacks. I do expect to win against lots of worse pairs, like that one. Just go for the fold 1-3 bet with the Queen Jack offsuit. And we're going to keep on trying to raise on the cutoff. King Jack. And we just got flatted. Let's see what we can make of this. Super nice board. No complaints here. My usual sizing on this type of boards is about half pot, so I guess I'm going to stick with that. I'm going to size up a bit on the turn. I still beat most of his top pairs. Times I'm behind, I have a pretty strong redraw, and we do want to charge him quite a bit for his flush draws. I don't expect hands like any. I don't expect any two-pair combos here. That's maybe the one combo of Jack-9 from a player like this. I'm gonna go for a third street of value here. I'm gonna go something like 38. And I think we're going to get called by all top pairs. And I think that's enough for us to just, keep on value betting. He does end up having the one top pair with the better kicker. But I think for the most part that will work out okay. I'm actually going to go for a flat here with the pocket fours with Barrow in the big blind. I think there's added value having a casual player there, so we can make spots like this profitable. I'll start off the float with the ace-6. He starts off with a small bet. It's a very difficult position for me to be in because the odds are ridiculously good, but I'm pretty sure this hand still just goes into the fold pile. With the a6 in the gutter, I really want to continue here. And I think it's just going to be a call rather than a bluff raise. I do block the nuts, which is awesome, and on this turn especially, I think we'll see a heck of a lot of double barrels from hands like 9-10. Considering it's blind versus blind, that's 16 combos each, so our ace high will be good enough there a lot. Now that it does kind of rely on river going check-check, so if he's triple barreling every single one, then I'll be making a lot of money with my Jack X. If he's not triple barreling all of them, then I'll make some money with this hand. He sizes up a bit on the river, not by much though. Yeah, I think this hand's a pretty clear fold. Fold or raise, actually. With the nut blocker, we could attempt to represent something there. But in the blind versus blind scenario, when he bets big 3 times, don't expect we're going to get too many relatively strong hands to fold. Calling all our suited hands versus min raise. This board is going to be really, really good for villain, the board on the left here. So I'm actually going to be checking quite a bit of my range, and that's going to include some top pairs. He goes for a check back, so I actually feel quite comfortable about my hand. I'm going to go for a delayed bluff on the right. So we'll go something like $9 on the turn. And because he's checked twice, I think we can just get away with the smallish bet of $4. Just expecting that his range is going to be really weak, and I could probably bet nearly anything there, and we'll get a fold a reasonable amount of the time. King, King, Jack. Very nice. We're going to start with the usual here. This hand is just very likely going to be 3 streets here. We're going to size up a bit on the turn, something like 11. Seems pretty good. If I face a bet here, I'll have a call with 10s. You saw a hand earlier this video. I made a bet in a similar situation with pocket 3s. I think pocket 10s benefit a lot less than pocket 3s do. So we'll take a check back line. Yeah, okay. I think we very likely just have to check back our kings. Unfortunate run out. I mean, I guess we were chopping after the turn, because both of our kickers were pretty lousy. We've got some pretty nice blockers here. I can rep some king queens. I guess we could go for a little bit of a bluff raise here. Basically, all he's repping is like king queen as well as pocket queens. I would expect his jack tens to fire very often. It's unfortunate that he shows up with exactly the value hand he's supposed to have. I decide to take a check on this board. Nice to balance flush draws. When he checks back, even without the flush draw here, I just expect like a king jack, a second pair good kicker to be the best hand a lot. So we're going to start out with a bet. And I think we're just going to check on the river. Don't really expect him to have too many sixes, because I just expect those to raise turn immediately a lot. But I don't think we get super thin value out of a lot of players. So just go for the check there. It is going to be a board that I'm going to be wanting to bluff very, very often, simply because that 10 is going to be pretty good for me anytime a board runs out in the way that Ace-King is doing super, super nice. That's a time you want to be bluffing quite a bit as the preflop raiser. And on that river, there was the queen, the jack, and the 10 on board. So Ace-King, of course, had the nut straight. We could call a raise here. I'm going to go with a raise this time. And I will just start out with a fold with the queen jack. Very low, very dry board. These are going to be pretty good. Just going to start it as usual with a pretty small bet. Also going to be raising up ace-queen. I do think with the double barrel here, we'll get a reasonable amount of folds from ace highs. So I'm going to attempt to do that. Not going to go extremely large here, simply because I don't think that much money is required to get him to fold an ace high. Ace-queen, of course, is going to be among the more popular ones in his range, and that is, of course, never folding. Without a heart blocker or a good queen blocker, I guess here I'm not going to fire river. He decides to go all in, which is naturally a very nice bet. I'd be put in a tough spot here if I had checked anything that would even consider a call. We'll go for a raise blind versus blind with queen 7. This board should favor me. I've got a moderate backdoor draw. Started with $8 here. Lovely, lovely turn. So I'm going to be continuing. The question is, how do I want to continue? I think betting is going to be better than attempting to go for some sort of a check raise. So we're going to keep on betting here, and this will very likely just turn itself into a triple barrel, either improved or not. Got a good flush blocker, got a good straight blocker. Top pair blocker isn't really relevant here because king queen will often just 3-bet preflop. I'm going to size up a little bit to 55, 56 on the river. I think this sizing should get most one pair hands to fold. And it looks like we get away with it right on. Turning the nuts is obviously nice. The question is, how do we get the most value with his pocket queens on the left here? I don't think betting very, very large is going to be the right way. So we'll start off with something like $7. And I'm once again going to take kind of a medium-y sizing here. Maybe something like 1650. I'm going to check back and attempt to realize my equity on this 7, or with this 7-6. Lovely river, if I do say so myself. He goes for the check, which means he probably doesn't have too many King X. So what's the largest sizing that I can bet to get called by some sort of a mid-pair? And I think something like 12, 13, 1250 will do okay. If he does show up with the king here, I'm going to look in the hand history there. Oh, perfect. If he did show up with the king, I think we'd need to give him a little bit of note that he's a bit on the passive side there, because I think kings, you know, other than for balance purposes, are just going to make a very straightforward value bet on that river. We're going to go for the 3-bet here against Mr. OMG Boomer. If I do get 4-bet, you know, unless he like clicks it back, this is going to be one of the hands that I'm going to be folding. For this price, I'm not going to be folding hands like Ace-9. I see a lot of people using this very, very, very small open raise sizing in a lot of like Zoom and Snap games. And I think that actually benefits people quite a bit simply because it's, you know, it's very easy for people to just, you know, auto fold. And that way you just take down more blinds. I'm kind of on the fence with the Ace-9. I mean, if I bet we get called by like any pair 8 or better, which he shouldn't have many 8s, but he'll have a moderate amount of 10s. I do have some showdown value, so you know we would just go for the check down there. Betting could be better. And when I get cold 4-bet, this hand's going to be a fold. And guys, I'm going to click sit out on next big blind. We'll do an extra round here and then wrap up the video. Ace-King, the position in the small blind is just going to start with the 3-bet. We get 4-bet, this one's a jam. Blind versus blind. We're raising most suited hands, that includes Jack-5. We get a flat in the small blind. If we get squeezed, Ace-Queen still continues. Naturally, it's quite strong. We get this board. Okay. Very strong top pair. Naturally, no spades. I will be starting off with a bet here. I usually start these off with about a half-pot bet. I think being 3-way, I might want to increase that just a little bit. We can go something like 825. I don't know if that makes too much of a difference. But I just want to limit the amount that these guys can float with basically any spade. And looks like that's going to be it, guys. So thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. I thought for the most part that video went pretty well. One hand I'm going to go look back on and kind of think about a little bit more is that pocket 10s on the river versus king-queen. Not entirely sure I loved my play there, but other than that, I think things went pretty all right. So naturally, guys, if you have any questions, comments, anything like that, make sure to post them in the section below the video. I do respond to any questions, so I look forward to hearing from you there. Once again, this has been Darius KomodoDragonJesus Vita for Poker VIP. Thanks for watching.